Today I am going to walk you through one of the most famous sites in Japan, the Seto Sea. We are going to talk about its geographic features, its social environment, as well as its impact on Japan's economy and culture. During this talk, you will get the chance to explore the beauty of the Seto Sea and see why it is economically, culturally, and ecologically important to Japan. My talk will be separated into the following parts. We will first talk about geographic features of the Seto Sea, including its characteristics, formation, climate, tides, and a phenomenon called red tide. Then we move on to its social environment, such as population and the national parks. After that, its impact on Japan's economy and culture will be discussed. Let's begin with its geographic information. This will provide you with some background knowledge of the Seto Sea. The Seto Sea is called Seto Naikai in Japanese. The Japanese word Naikai refers to inland sea. And yes, the full name of Seto Sea is actually Seto Inland Sea. So, what are inland seas? Inland seas are defined as seas that are semi-enclosed and are only connected to the ocean through narrow channels. Inland seas usually have many islands, channels, and straits. Characteristics of the Seto Inland Sea well fits the above two descriptions. It contains approximately 700 islands and has a long coastline of 7,230 kilometers. It is approximately 450 kilometers wide from west to east and stretches 15 kilometers to 55 kilometers north to south. The Seto Inland Sea is connected to the Pacific Ocean through the Kii Channel and Bungo Channel on the east. These two channels allow water to exchange between the Pacific Ocean and Seto Inland Sea. It is also connected to the Sea of Japan through the Kanmon Strait on the west. The Seto Inland Sea is surrounded by Japan's three main islands, Honshu Island, Shikoku Island, and Kyushu Island. The inland sea has a total surface area of 23,203 kilometers square and an average water depth of 38 meters. The Seto Inland Sea today is actually located in a basin. Geologists believe that the sea surface was much lower than today's during the Quaternary glaciation period. The sea surface level significantly rose after the glaciation period. Seawater then poured into the basin, forming the Seto Inland Sea we see today. The Seto Inland Sea is famous for its unique climate features. The region is in the Seto Inland Sea climate zone. This region, named after the sea, is relatively warm and mild, with little rainfall. The average temperature of this region is about 15 degrees Celsius. Average rainfall is about 1,000 to 1,400 mm annually, and rainfall here are concentrated in the rainy seasons and typhoon periods. Although the Seto Inland Sea and its surrounding regions do have a lot of sunlight, but its low precipitation makes it sometimes dry in the summer. The Seto Inland Sea has a fast tide feature due to a big difference of high and low tide. Here I grabbed two tide charts. They show the tide information of two stations around the Seto Inland Sea on April the 1st. As we can see, there is one high tide and two low tides in a 12-hour period. And this of course happens twice a day. The tidal range is 1 to 3 meters in the east and 3 to 4 meters in the west. The red tide does not have much to do with tides. I am going to talk about it here because it is something we can see at the Seto Inland Sea. Red tide is a harmful ecological phenomenon that causes water to change to a reddish color when certain phytoplankton or bacteria in seawater reproduce explosively. Red tide is very common at the sea. Since it has a relative shallow average depth, it is greatly affected by incoming rivers. Its uneven annual rainfall results in the seasonal fluctuation in water temperature and water salinity, and makes the inland sea very susceptible to episodic environmental events. Therefore, red tides happen periodically at the Seto Inland Sea and causes severe damage to fisheries of the region. As I previously mentioned, the Seto Inland Sea pretty much separates Japan's three major islands, so a lot of people live around it. There are 13 prefectures surrounding the Seto Inland Sea, and the total area of those prefectures is about 68,000 kilometers square. They account for 18% of the total land area of Japan. Population of the area is about 35 million, about 18% of total population in Japan. However, population densities in these prefectures are 1.6 times higher than Japan's average, meaning that population is highly concentrated in areas around the Seto Inland Sea. The Seto Inland Sea is known for its beautiful natural scenery. Many national parks, quasi-national parks, are therefore located around the Seto Inland Sea, or on the islands. Human activities also shaped the environment of the Seto Inland Sea and islands on it. The national parks focus on the relationship and interaction between humans and nature. So, why are these national parks important? This is because tourism revenue in the Seto Inland Sea region has great contribution of Japan's economy. Its most famous national park, the Seto Inland Sea National Park, is the one with the second most tourists annually in average in Japan. The Seto Inland Sea produces neither raw materials nor fuel resources, and it does not contain a large market. Due to its geographic feature, it heavily relies on water and land transportation. It is a typical processing trade area in Japan, and most industries here are tertiary industries. When talking about the Seto Inland Sea, we cannot ignore its fishery and aquaculture production. In the last few decades, fisheries and aquaculture were very developed in the Seto Inland Sea regions. Annual fish production here was the largest among all semi-enclosed seas around the world, and accounted for roughly 4% of sea fishery production of Japan. Sea aquaculture production, so everything other than fish, was even more significant. It accounted for 23% of total sea aquaculture production in Japan. Unfortunately, factors such as industrialization of the coastal areas, increasing in the number of industries, and expansion of landfills in waterfront areas caused the Seto Inland Sea water to be seriously polluted. The area of shallow water has reduced, and marine ecosystems were also influenced negatively. Periodic red tide mentioned above also had serious impact on fisheries. Recently, in 2015, the Japanese government enacted a new program in order to change the Seto Inland Sea environment. This program aimed to ameliorate coastal environment, water quality, natural and cultural landscapes, and sustainable utilization of fish resources. Instead of only focusing on changing water quality, the government began to focus on the restoration of habitat in order to fully solve environmental issues in the Seto Inland Sea. The Seto Inland Sea is also important for its cultural contribution. It had become a traffic artery due to its geographic advantages since ancient times, and had taken on a role of exchanging cultures with outside countries. Although the islands in the Seto Inland Sea retain their traditional culture and natural landscapes, but the islands today are not as energetic as they once were due to the decrease of population on the islands. How did it make a change? The answer is the Seto Uchi International Art Festival. The Seto Uchi International Art Festival exhibit contemporary artworks on the islands of the Seto Inland Sea, and is held every 3 years since 2010. It aims on building a bridge between residents of the islands and visitors from all over the world by presenting the beauty of the Seto Inland Sea and its cultural landscapes through fantastic masterpieces. The Seto Inland Sea is economically, culturally, and ecologically important to Japan. It is well known for its unique geographic features and beautiful natural scenery. It is also home for almost 1/5 of Japan's total population and plays an important role in Japan's economic and cultural development. Even though the Seto Inland Sea is currently facing some environmental problems, but fortunately people have realized these issues and are working towards fixing them. Hope in the not-so-far future, after the pandemic ends, we will have the chance to visit this amazing inland sea and explore its beauty with our own eyes. Thank you and hope you enjoy.